I'm a nice man. Yeah, I'm a nice man.
What's going on? Welcome to episode 6 of Sports and Bullshit. It is January 30th. Right now I'm recording. It's about 7:30 p.m. Thursday before Super Bowl Sunday. I was supposed to have a couple people sitting with me today. Unfortunately, they bailed last second. Work commitments. One of them wanted to go to Super Bowl Boulevard in Times Square. Didn't sound like a good time to me. So I'll be winging it by myself this week. Might keep it a little bit shorter. Mostly going to be a lot of Super Bowl talk this week. I'll throw some numbers at you, why I'm making my picks a certain way, why I think a certain team will win. We'll get into UFC 169 a bit. I was fortunate enough to receive tickets to the event this Saturday night. So I'm very grateful for that as well. Should be a good card. I'll go into that a little bit. So why don't we jump right into it? Basically, everyone knows right now it's going to be the Seattle Seahawks against the Denver Broncos. Denver is listed as the home team, even though it is in New Jersey. Denver's coming off the big win over the New England Patriots in the AFC Championship. Seattle's coming off the big win over divisional rivals San Francisco 49ers in the NFC Championship. Now, I was really kind of torn. I was leaning one way to begin with. Don't get me wrong. I had an idea on who I was picking. And I went back and I watched both games. Key things from defensive line play, offensive line play, safety, corner, just about everything you need to really determine how a game is gonna break. And while I was swaying one way, watching the footage, and I went back and watched some games from the last few weeks, the last 6 games of both teams specifically, I watched quite a bit of film on. And as I watched it, the way I was leaning became even more heavy that way. There's certain things that favor the team I'm going to pick dramatically. Now, before I do that, let me go into Seattle a little bit. The last 6 Seattle Seahawks games, they scored 17 points against San Francisco on the road in a loss. 23 points in a win against the Giants at MetLife. But keep in mind, they picked off Eli Manning 5 times in that game, and it can only muster 23 points. A lot of field goals, a lot of dead drives. Couldn't really move the ball against an okay Giants defense. 10 points against Arizona in a loss at home, 27 points in a win against the Rams. That one of those was a defensive touchdown, so really 20 offensive points. 23 against the Saints, 23 against the 49ers. So that kind of tells me that their offense has plateaued. The numbers support it. When you consider those last 6 weeks, Russell Wilson is averaging 167 passing yards per game. Marshawn Lynch is only averaging 89 yards per game rushing in those last 6 weeks. And that number is boosted up by his last 2 weeks rushing as well. The one big thing that's sticking out is his yards per carry have dropped dramatically. The number has gone up because he was aided by 2 long touchdown runs in both games against the Saints and the 49ers. But that's one of the Seattle's keys. That's what they do. They keep feeding him the rock. They keep pounding it. And, while he might get 1, 2, 3 yards at a time, they're confident that eventually he's going to break one off. Now, one of the big X factors coming into the game, obviously, is the return of Percy Harvin. Now, how long will he return for? No one really knows. He could have gotten injured getting off the plane, getting to New Jersey. So, I expect to see a lot of him in the kicking game. Denver did have the worst kickoff coverage in the NFL this year when they're kicking off. Another thing to consider is Matt Prater did miss a week with some type of illness, and he even said he's going to have trouble kicking balls out of the back of the end zone. So I expect Percy Harvin, barring injury, which is a likely thing with him, he should have some kind of effect in the return game. So he's a huge X factor coming in this. I don't think he'll have a huge effect receiving because he's not the downfield threat as far as being physical and getting off the press, but I think in the return game he could have a big effect. Now, another thing to consider, since December 2nd, you're going back to 2013 still, Russell Wilson hasn't had any multiple passing touchdown games. That's a big deal when you consider that Denver is a very good run defense. So they can think that they can run the ball all they want and we keep running it, we'll be fine. That makes a huge deal because you're going against an offense that is going to put up points no matter which way you twist it. So I gave you Russell Wilson's numbers in those last 6 weeks, the passing yards per game. I gave you Lynch's rushing yards the last 6 weeks average. Last 6 weeks for Peyton Manning. 330 yards per game passing, and the Broncos rushing starter, because they did go between Monte Ball and Nosha Moreno, starting running back was averaging 64 yards per game in the last 6 weeks. So another one to show you. Last 6 weeks, Seattle's defense is giving up 13 points per game. Denver's defense is giving up 19 points per game. So both are playing very, very good defense out the last few weeks. You give up less than 20 points, you have a pretty solid defense. Obviously, Seattle has a fantastic defense. Now, the thing that I really want to pay attention to in this game, and I recommend you do it too. Everyone loves Richard Sherman. Everyone has an opinion on him. One thing you can't argue is that he is a fantastic cornerback. I think I'm going to tell you he's the best cornerback in the game. The one thing they don't do with him is they don't play shadow coverage with him. He always stays on the left side of the field and covers whoever is there. So if the Broncos line up Demaryius Thomas there the whole game, then he's shut down most likely. Richard Sherman played 98% of his defensive snaps on the left side of the field. That tells you everything right there. The thing is, the Broncos don't line up receivers in the same spot. They move their guys around. You'll see Demaryius Thomas playing the X and the Y a lot. He'll play the slot sometimes. They do a lot of schemes. They do a lot of misdirection and movement before the snap. So I do think Seattle needs to change up their game plan a little bit and move Richard Sherman around, because the other corners on Seattle are not going to be able to shut him down, and he is the key. He's the game breaker. Decker is awesome. Wes Welker is awesome. Julius Thomas is an awesome tight end. But Demaryius Thomas is the guy that can catch a ball 10, 15 yards out and take it to the house very easily. He's one of the best receivers in the game with the ball in his hands. Now, the other thing with Seattle's defense, they have the best defense in the league. I love their defense because they play old school defense. They jam you at the line. They press you on the line. The big thing they do, every single play, pretty much every single play, they are committing pass interference and they are committing defensive holding, because they know if they commit it every play, the refs can't call it every time. The thing you see so many defenses do now is they play very soft bump and run coverage, and when they're about to get burned, they commit pass interference. And the refs are going to see it. If you had 10 plays in coverage and you only did pass interference once, they're going to call it. Seattle commits it nearly every single play. Now, the one thing I want to say, Richard Sherman obviously opened a lot of people's eyes, and he definitely drew the wrath of more people than people that supported him, like myself. So I think that's going to be key. If the refs start making calls on him early because he upset people and everything, I thought he handled himself great after the interview and apologized and everything. But that's going to be something interesting to watch. Now, as far as Seattle's whole defense, they play cover 2 and cover 3 mostly. They're very committed to stopping the pass. They're a very good run defense as well. But they're going to have to play the nickel a lot in this game because they're going to spread out the ball. Denver's going to go 3-4 wide receiver sets, at times 5 wide receiver sets with Andre Caldwell. So I'm going to be very interested to see who lines up on who. You're going to see Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas, who are the best coverage safeties in the league and a very hard-hitting safety duo. But you're going to have to watch the middle of the field because the linebackers are going to be having to go into coverage a lot. And there's only going to be 1 or 2 linebackers back there to cover. And that's where Julius Thomas, Wes Welker are going to come into play because they're going to play on the middle field mostly. But the big thing I'm expecting from Denver here to counteract that fantastic Seattle pass defense, most teams use the run game to set up the pass. You run the ball, you set up play action, yada, yada, yada. Seattle does it great because they don't have a great passing game. What I expect Denver to do is use the pass to set up the run. They're going to come out with those sets. They're going to run a lot of trap draws out of the shotgun. They're going to do a lot of misdirection type plays. Obviously, Peyton's going to do the line changes. And it's really going to, I think it's going to make a huge difference because if you get Seattle behind, like say Denver goes up by 2 touchdowns early, that game's as good as over because Seattle can't get into a shootout. They don't have the weapons on offense. Their offensive weapons, their best receiver is probably Baldwin, and he's a nice player. He's a nice wide receiver. Golden Tate is a slot receiver. Baldwin is a slot receiver. Percy Harvin, like I said, X factor more in the return game, but he's the biggest game breaker. They don't have the kind of weapons to when they play behind 2 touchdowns, like you saw with the Patriots last week. They're small wide receivers. That's the same thing Seattle has. Small wide receivers that they have to get 10, 15 yards per catch. They're not going to beat you deep, and that's where Denver's defense struggles. Passes over the top. And I think the rest for Champ Bailey is huge. Obviously, the rest for for Percy Harvin's huge, so you might see Champ on Percy a lot with Chris Harris injured. Now, Denver's defense has stepped up big time in the last few weeks. They did a great job against Tom Brady. They did a great job against Phillip Rivers. So I think their key isn't so much rushing the passer, but it's containing Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, he's very interesting when he takes his snaps. He's like Frank Tarkenton. He drops back 15, 20 yards after he takes a snap, and that's what allows him to move in the pocket so well. I know he gets labeled as a scrambler, but the thing he does is he drops back in the pocket so well and so far that it allows him to move around and allows broken plays to happen. So I expect to see Denver's defensive ends, they're going to contain on the edges. They're not going to worry about getting to him and collapsing the pocket. They're going to worry about containing the edges because Jack Del Rio and John Fox are going to feel confident in their defensive backs and linebackers to not let a broken play happen as long as they keep Russell inside the tackle box. I do worry about both coaches in here because I'm not crazy about either. I think they're great defensive coaches, great player coaches as well, but their in-game coaching is what bothers me. Very, very conservative, especially Carroll. Fox is as well. He screwed them. He screwed them almost a few weeks ago. He screwed them against the Ravens last year. So watch the play calling as the game goes on at the end of the first half as well. Now, one of the big things for Denver, their pass protection has been phenomenal. I know they have been playing these juggernaut defenses, but they won against Chandler Jones. He had 11.5 sacks this year. The San Diego defense gave him issues earlier in the season with schemes and different types of designs on blitzes. And the thing that Seattle doesn't do, they can get to the quarterback, but they do it with a 4-man rush. They don't send a ton of linebackers on blitzes. They send safeties occasionally, but they don't have that guy that, gets 10, 11, 12 sacks in a season. They just have 4 very, very good linemen, but not the kind of linemen like you saw with the Giants in 2007 when they beat the Patriots. They had 4 guys that could easily rush the passer and get double-digit sacks. So they're going to have to go a little unconventional to what they're used to and send linebackers and send safeties because a 4-man rush is not going to beat Peyton Manning. You have to go with exotic designs and blitzes. It's what worked for San Diego earlier in the season. It's been the blueprint getting Peyton Manning rattled throughout his career. 4-man rush is not going to beat him. But as I said, the Denver offensive line has been fantastic. He's been hit once in the whole postseason. And Peyton is also a lot better in the pocket than Colin Kaepernick is. He's one of the great pocket passers of all time. He's not going to hold on to the ball for too long. He's going to get the ball out of his hands with his fantastic release. I know people say, he throws ducks. You throw ducks and you still throw 55 touchdowns. It shows you know how to throw the ball where it needs to go. Now, let's flip the table here and talk about Seattle's offensive line. They are I know Ryan Tannehill got sacked more, but no team gave up more sacks per passing play in the NFL this season than the Seattle Seahawks. Last year, Russell Wilson was sacked once every 29 passing plays. That is a phenomenal margin. This year, he was sacked once every 8 passing plays. That is a horrible margin. By comparison, Ryan Tannehill was sacked once every 17 passing plays, and he was the most sacked quarterback in the league because he threw more. So they need to protect Russell, and that's something that they've struggled with. I know that San Francisco and New Orleans are a lot better at getting to the quarterback, but the consistent here throughout the season has been that Seattle's offensive line has not done a great job of protecting Russell Wilson. Part of that is because of injuries on the line, and they don't have great players. They have a couple good guys on the offensive line. It's a much better run-blocking offensive line, but at the same time, how good would they be without a guy like Marshawn Lynch, who is the best in the league at breaking tackles and one of the best in the league at running between the tackles? So watch the offensive line play of both Seattle and Denver. If you see Peyton Manning not getting touched early and you see Russell Wilson get knocked on his ass, that's a really good sign for Denver and a very bad sign for Seattle. Now, the big thing that you're billing here is the number 1 defense versus the number 1 offense. It's only happened once in the last 20 years in the Super Bowl. I know we've had 2 number 1 seeds recently with the Saints and Indianapolis a few years ago, but this is the true number 1 offense against a true number 1 defense. And the other big thing that, people are like, Seattle's looked so nasty the last few weeks. They're a phenomenal home team. They went 7-1 at home this year, 8-0 the year before. I think in the last 4 years, they've only missed covering the spread at home in 3 games, which is absurd. That if you're a betting man, that's a really good line to play. But, it was going to be a home game for the Broncos. That place is going to be so pro Peyton Manning because he is one of the most beloved players in the league. I don't think anyone really hates Peyton Manning. And it was going to be pro Manning to begin with. And what Richard Sherman did, while I loved it, the ignorant sports fan didn't love it. The casual fan did not love it. They just saw someone they labeled a thug. And I think that's ridiculous without actually knowing who Richard Sherman is and what he's about. And the people, like I said, the people that attend the Super Bowl, they're not the biggest football fans. They probably don't even watch every game of whoever their favorite team is. The Super Bowl is designed, the people that attend is designed for corporate America, big money clients that go there to watch the game. It's as much a social experience and a social gathering as it is about the actual sport. So when Richard Sherman pissed off the general population that doesn't really follow the sport, he turned them all into Denver Bronco fans. I think you're going to see a significant home field advantage for the Denver Broncos. And the one thing that makes Seattle's defense so good is that home field advantage when they play in Seattle, because they get a lot of false starts and delay of game calls, and they can get off the line really quick, and their offensive line can do a better job blocking. That will not be the case here at all. So, I definitely think people count Seattle out like crazy or ridiculous. I do think that Denver is going to win. I think they're going to win by at least 10 points. I don't think they're going to be able to put up more than 20 points, and I don't think they can hold Denver under 20 points. Denver has too many weapons. When you talk about Demaryius Thomas, a 1,000-yard receiver, over 10 touchdowns. Eric Decker, a 1,000-yard receiver, over 10 touchdowns. Wes Welker, despite missing 2.5 games, had 70 receptions, 10 touchdowns, almost 800 yards. Then you got Julius Thomas, over 700 yards and 10 touchdowns, and a much improving running game, and Moreno and Monte Ball. And what Seattle needs to do here to win is they need to kind of go away from what they've won with all year. And that's kind of hard for a team that has been the most consistent team in the league this year. They can't just go to their typical cover 2 shadow covering like I told you about with Richard Sherman. They have to move him around. They have to go with exotic blitzes as well. If they just do that 4-man rush with Bennett, Averill, all them, that is not going to work, because that is not enough to get Peyton Manning uncomfortable. You want to send 4 guys from one side and 2 guys from the other. You want to send 3 guys on one side and 4 on the other. You can't just send that 4-man rush, and that's what Seattle does more than anyone. They've sent more 4-man rushes than anyone in the NFL this year. And they didn't even lead the league in sacks, which tells you a lot that 4-man front is pretty good. But that's not going to work against Peyton Manning. It never has. I think they'd be smart to send Earl Thomas and Cam Chancellor a lot. I know you don't want to lose their tackling ability and their coverage ability, but if you make Peyton Manning uncomfortable, because he's going to be watching them the most. He always keeps an eye on guys like Ed Reed, Polamalu when he plays. He always keeps eye on the center fielders of the defense. So I would move them around. So he is constantly worrying about if they're coming, if they're going, if they're covering, if they're tackling, So they definitely should do that. Now, but on offense, what Seattle should do is they should pass more. Go for those little 5-10-yard passes. Don't try getting fancy. Don't try doing too much play action, because Denver's defense is going to contain the run fairly well. I do expect Marshawn Lynch to get off a few runs, 10, 15, 20 yards. I don't think he'll have a big 30, 40, 50-yarder gainer, because that Denver run defense is fantastic. And they're particularly good against power backs like Marshawn Lynch. They struggle more with the little scat backs like a Ryan Matthews, people like that. So I definitely think that Seattle should be throwing the ball, not more than running the ball, but they should throw it more than they're used to. But they got to protect Russell. Now Denver, like I said, it's all in their game plan. They need to use the pass, set up the run, and if they get a 2-score lead, I really don't expect it to be that close. I think it'll be close going in the half, but I think Peyton Manning is going to come out, make the right adjustments, and I expect Denver to win this one 27, we'll set 27-17, and he'll win his second ring. So, I could be wrong. I don't think I'll be wrong. And I mean, I like Seattle a lot. I like Wilson. I like Marshawn Lynch. I like Richard Sherman. I like all those guys. The only guy I don't like on the team is Pete Carroll. So I have no vested interest. I'm a very big Peyton Manning fan. I think he is the best quarterback ever. So I would prefer to see them win, but if Seattle wins, I'll be happy. They deserve it. They have a phenomenal fan base. They are well coached. They are an extremely well run organization as far as drafting goes. You look, they don't really have any big free agent names. I know they picked up Bennett and Averill and Percy Harvin. That was obviously a miscue how much they gave him. He'll be the highest paid wide receiver in the league next year, by the way. But if Seattle wins, they deserve it. They've never won anything. They play in a division with teams that have won before. So, it should be a great game early on. I expect it to be a very physical game, but I think Peyton's ability to adjust and not make mistakes, like I told you how before they picked off Eli 5 times and they only put up 23 points. Peyton's not going to throw 5 interceptions. And if you can only put up 23 points when picking off a guy 5 times, that's not going to beat Peyton Manning, not with the groove he's in, not with the weapons he has. So Denver 27, Seattle 17. Peyton wins his second. If you disagree with me, I'd love to hear it and tell me why. All right, next thing. No, not everyone's big MMA fans. I am. UFC 169 this weekend. I'm just going to go over the main card. Not going to go into the prelims with people I've never really heard of. First fight of the night, you got Jamie Varner against Abel Trujillo. Abel, I guess, was originally supposed to fight Bobby Green. Got hurt. Jamie Varner stepped up on short notice. Abel's coming off a TKO win over Roger Bowling. It was a rematch. Their first fight got overturned after an illegal knee. Varner just lost a close split decision to Gleison Tibau. So his turnaround time on this fight isn't great, but Varner's always in phenomenal shape. I've met him a couple times. He's always in amazing shape. The guy's a beast athlete. I think Abel here is a little too much. He's very explosive, hits very hard. Varner's been a guy that hasn't liked getting beat up in fight. I mean, no one likes getting fucking beat up. I mean, who does? But he's not a guy that likes to get pushed around. But Varner, he doesn't get enough credit for his skill set sometimes. I know people don't like him. He's got the annoying lisp and he sounds stupid and he's kind of a tool. But I've met him. He's a nice guy. But I think Abel's physical ability and power and explosiveness is going to be a little too much in this fight. So I got Abel by TKO. This fight is awesome. This is a flyweight fight. John Lineker against Ali Bagahatanov. Lineker's coming off 4 straight wins. 3 straight by TKO. Ali's coming off 10 straight wins, 2 straight in the UFC. Now, Lineker has missed weight 3 times in the UFC. I was actually at the fight when he fought Louis Godinot, and he missed weight, got choked out, but he's missed weight 3 times, and he's cutting to 125. He is a massive flyweight, and he hits very, very hard. He's got a good chin. He's a tough kid. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen Ali Bagahatanov last fought Tim Elliott. It was a really good fight, actually. A lot of mostly on the feet. Very compact guy. He comes from a Sambo background, but he likes to strike. He said specifically he likes knocking people out. And that's what both these guys do. They stand and trade. Both do have grappling backgrounds, obviously. But these two specifically, this is going to be fight of the night. These dudes are going to come to brawl. I hopefully Lineker makes weight, because if he makes weight and then loses like I think he's going to, he's not going to have a job anymore, and it's a shame because he is a very, very talented flyweight, very talented fighter in general. But Ali is a very, very talented guy, very young as well, a true contender in that 125 division that Demetrius Johnson is champion of. So I got Ali here winning by submission in the 3rd round after he drops him. Co-main event of the evening is Frank Mir against Alistair Overeem, heavyweight fight. Mir is coming off 3 straight losses. The last one was Josh Barnett. Took a big knee and got knocked out. Reem is coming off 2 straight losses by knockout. The one to Bigfoot Silva, the other one to Travis Brown. He had a steroid positive test before that, and he obviously hasn't looked the same since. Although he was winning both the Bigfoot Silva fight and the Brown fight before getting knocked out. It's the story of his career. He gets beat up a little, gasses out, fight doesn't go his way, doesn't have a great chin. Frank Mir, I hate with every fiber of my being. As I said, I am going to the fights this weekend. There's a good chance I will see Frank Mir. He is the kind of guy, not that I would do it, but if he pissed me off, I'd spit in his face and not worry about the repercussions. What's he going to do? He's going to beat me up? The professional fighter is going to be up a 25-year-old that weighs 200 pounds, and this asshole's weighing 260 while he's on TRT? Yeah, Mir did get a TRT exemption from the New Jersey State Athletic Commission for this fight. So both these guys are going to be pretty juiced up. Reem, obviously, a little bit different. He can't juice as much as he used to. But this is the kind of fight that Frank Mir has always lost. fighting a big guy that particularly likes bullying people around, pushing them in the clinch. And Frank Mir always struggles when people bully him around and push him into the clinch. Carwin fight, the Barnett fight, he doesn't like that. Now, as long as Reem finishes him early, the fight is his to lose. He's got, obviously, phenomenal striking game, very good in the clinch, good grappling game as well. Obviously, Mir is one of the best grapplers in the heavyweight division. So I think Reem's going to finish this one early. I think Mir's done. I don't think he's got much left. Mir is a very violent fighter. When he finishes fights, it's by brutal knock. Even when he loses, it's brutal. He either gets knocked out brutally or he finishes someone, knocks him out brutally, breaks their arm. If this one goes to the second round, I'd expect Mir to grind him out and take a submission late or even get a TKO because, like I said, Reem does not have a great chin or great cardio. Neither guy has great cardio for that matter. I'm going to take Alistair Overeem in this one, first round, knockout, a knee from the clinch, similar to the Josh Barnett fight. All right, so the co-main event is for the featherweight title in the UFC, Jose Aldo against Ricardo Lamas. Aldo's coming off a TKO victory over the Korean Zombie after Korean Zombie dislocated his shoulder. 16 straight wins for Aldo. He's been on an absolute tear. Hasn't really looked crazy vulnerable besides when a fight goes on. He tends to tire out, slow down, gas out. Lamas is coming off 4 straight wins. Now, Lamas has a very, very strong wrestling base. Very good wrestler, good striker. And what everyone thinks with Aldo is you want to take him into a fight deep. You want to gas him out, get him tired, and then take the rounds late. It was Frankie Edgar's game plan. It looked like it was Uriah Faber's game plan. But Danny Castillo doesn't have a great chin. He has been knocked out twice. Once was by some dude whose name I don't even remember, and he got knocked out. Or excuse me, Lamas doesn't have a great chin. He got knocked out by Danny Castillo. And I think that Lamas is being overlooked a little bit because he does have the right skills to make this the kind of fight that could give Aldo problems as far as the wrestling base goes. He has a very similar skill set to Frankie Edgar, actually, but he doesn't have as good a footwork and striking or as good a chin and toughness, which is what Frankie Edgar is known for. Frankie Edgar is next to impossible to finish, knock out, and he's going to keep coming forward. So I think that Aldo, he's going to finish this one in the second round, probably once again in spectacular fashion. You're going to see Lamas trying to clinch him against the cage and get bucked right off. Now, Aldo, like I said, he has been getting tired. A lot of people have said that he needs to move up to 155. A lot of people want to see that fight with Anthony Pettis. They think that the weight cut is too much on him. So when these things tend to happen where it looks like they're cutting too much weight, it happens quick. And this is Lamas' opportunity. There is a chance Aldo's overlooking him, but I think Aldo is just way too skilled for him. His striking, his grappling, just about everything. So Aldo by second round knockout. Main event of the evening is Uriah Faber fighting Renan Barão for the bantamweight championship of the UFC. This is a rematch. Renan Barão is actually originally supposed to be fighting Dominick Cruz. It was supposed to be a unification bout. Cruz coming back from injury. Unfortunately, Dominick Cruz tore his groin. He hasn't fought in almost 3 years. He gave up the title, so Barão's interim UFC bantamweight championship became the just basic UFC bantamweight championship. Now, as I said, this was a rematch. First fight, Renan Barão won very handily. It was a decision, not a great fight, but he dominated it for the most part. I think there were scores were 50-45, 5 rounds to 1, and 2 of the other judges said 4 rounds to 1. Now, since that fight, Uriah Faber has won 4 in a row, 3 finishes specifically. Now, Renan Barão has 1 loss in his career, and that was his first career fight. 21 straight wins. There was a no contest in there. His last win was a spectacular spinning wheel kick knockout to Eddie Wineland, a very, very talented fighter himself. I like Uriah a lot. He is absolutely spectacular when he's not fighting for a title. He makes everyone look bad that isn't a champion. He drops almost everyone that isn't a champion, submits Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts, but you notice the one consistent I've said here is when he's not fighting a champion. It's the common thing with Team Alpha Male. They have a ton of talented fighters, Mendes, Benavidez, Faber, but whenever they're fighting for a title, they just come up short. They're always the bridesmaid, never the bride. And I don't Uriah, they call him the California Kid. He's got 3-4 years on Renan Barão here. And I can't see this fight going much different. I think it won't go differently in the way that Renan Barão is going to dominate, but I think that it's going to be much more dominating fashion. I don't think Uriah can do much different. He needs to get the fight to the ground. He needs to use his explosive submission, wrestling game, ground and pound. Barão is a black belt as well, but Faber operates at a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt level. But I think Barao, he's definitely gotten more comfortable in his last few UFC fights. He went to decision a few times, and now he has 2 straight finishes in very, very dominating fashion. And the guys that always give Uriah trouble are the guys that have very good leg kicks and movement, and that's what Barao is great at. So I think this one will end up going the full 5. I think Barao will win by decision, very dominant, but I think it'll be a little bit closer in certain rounds. I think early on you'll see Faber do well, but as it wears on and Renan Barao gets more comfortable with what Uriah is going to throw at him, the guy who lost a fight when they're rematching, the guy who lost the first fight almost always has the upper hand because he doesn't need to change too much. So I think early on Uriah will do okay, and that's his opportunity. He needs to finish this one early, but ultimately I think Barao wins this one by decision. Should be an awesome fight card. I'm so pumped to go. Obviously I'll hang out with some of the fighters, meet a few different ones. I've met most of them, but it should be a really good time. So I'm definitely keeping this one a bit shorter. Probably would finish up right around 40 minutes. I know some people said the last few went a little too long, but I appreciate you guys listening. We're going to jump right into the Q&A session. First question is Super Bowl related. If the Denver Broncos can shut down Marshawn Lynch, do you think it will be a blowout? If they can somehow hold Marshawn Lynch like they held LeGarrette Blount last week, LeGarrette Blount was held 5 carries for 6 yards or vice versa. Yeah, if they can hold him under 20 yards, let's say they held him total 20 carries and he gets 30 yards, it's going to be a blowout. If they fall behind early, it's going to be a blowout because Seattle can't get into a game where they need to throw the ball that much. I know I said that they need to pass more than they usually do, but they don't want to get into a game where they have to pass. They want to get into a game where they can pass and it can confuse the Denver defense. So if they shut down Marshawn Lynch, this game will not be close, but shutting down Marshawn Lynch is a lot easier said than done. If both Aldo and Renan Barao win at UFC 169, where do they fit into the pound-for-pound rankings? There's a follow-up question as well, but I would think you'd have to put both of them way up there. I mean, neither look crazy vulnerable. I know Aldo had a couple close fights, but if they both win in dominating fashion, who really looks like they can give him a challenge? So yeah, they've been on these incredible win streaks. It'll be 17 for Barao or 17 for Aldo, 22 for Renan Barao. So yeah, they'd have to be up there, probably top 5. I think pound for pound rankings are a little silly. Renan Barao's 135 pounds. He's going to get his ass whooped in a street fight against Cain Velasquez. And they put Ronda Rousey on pound for pound rank. I love Ronda Rousey. She got her ass kicked by the shittiest middleweight in the UFC middleweight division. You know, it's as simple as that. So pound for pound rankings are a little silly, but as far as what they're supposed to be, yeah, they'd have to be up there. The follow-up question is their camp Nova União, the most underrated camp in mixed martial arts. It's a very good camp. They don't have a ton of depth. I know they got 2 dominant champions, but who do they really have falling behind them? We hear all the time, oh, this guy is Aldo's main training partner, and then I don't remember what his name was, but he came over and he sucked. They don't get talked about enough. They have a lot of great coaches there, and they do have some young guys in there that should be coming up in the future, but I have a hard time calling them underrated right now. What do you think about the list of people that Derek Jeter has given herpes to? Now the whole story is that Derek Jeter's a notorious playboy. There's a lot of stories out there that he has these one night stands with women, and he gives them a gift bag with exotic fruits and foods and signed baseball. And he apparently has given quite a few women herpes. One of them being Jessica Alba is one of the stories. I can't confirm these, so God, if anyone hears this from legal teams, I am not saying this is true. This is just stories that are circulated. It's got to be a lot if he actually has herpes. I mean, most women would throw themselves at Derek Jeter, even when now he's like 40. But my favorite story of him is some woman, there's 2. Women comes to his house and he says to the woman, no cell phones. And he actually has a little box where women have to put their cell phones because he don't want any pictures taken. But this woman walks into his house and he's sitting there watching game film of himself and he's going, yeah, Jeets! Yeah, Jeets! And he apparently does this during sex too. Cheers himself on saying, yeah, Jeets. I'm not a Yankees fan. I'm not even a Derek Jeter fan. I respect him as a player, but that makes me a fan of Derek Jeter the person, because if you have the confidence to say, yeah, Jeets, while you're laying pipe to a woman, good for you, dude. That's awesome. I mean, yeah, it's got to be well over 50 he's given herpes to if he actually has it, though. All right, this is some WWE talk. The Royal Rumble was this weekend. Someone asked, what was my take on Batista winning the Rumble and Daniel Bryan not coming out at 30? As far as Batista winning the Rumble goes, I knew it was going to happen, so I can't say I was too angry. I think anyone that thought Batista wasn't going to win is out of their minds. What else are they going to do? You bring back the guy who's the big name. He's in a big Marvel movie coming out this summer. He's obviously there for money purposes. They want to get more big bodies in there. They failed with Ryback. They don't like how they have so many small guys as top billing. So I don't like it. I don't think he should have won. I think it's unfair to guys like Punk and Bryan and Cesaro and Big E, all these younger guys, or not just younger, but guys that have been around for a long time being pushed aside for truthfully a part-timer. So I'm not crazy about it, but I wasn't mad because I knew it was going to happen. As far as Daniel Bryan not coming out at 30, by the time 30 rolled around, by the time 28 rolled around, we knew who was going to, we remembered the pre-match interviews and we knew it was going to be Mysterio. It was a letdown. I think they made a huge mistake not having Bryan in it because he is the most over guy they have. It was disappointing. He deserves better. I was hoping they would do something like 31 and he comes out. The crowd would have gone crazy. And if it came down to him and Batista at the end, it's a true David versus Goliath type story. You could do close finishes. You could have him throw out Batista and then they rematch on Raw. They rematch on Elimination Chamber. But they elected to go a different way. And could it have been by design? Because more people were talking about it after the fact. Some people think that the fans would have been more mad if Bryan did come in 30 and then got eliminated by Batista. So I was disappointed. I wanted to see him in there. He had the match of the night with Bray Wyatt to open the show, so it was disappointing. If Big Van Vader showed up on your doorstep, no shoes, no money, and no phone, would you let him in? And if so, would you make him take off his leather mask before entering? If a guy like Vader, if you don't know who Vader is, look him up. He's a monster of a person, one of the biggest heels monsters in professional wrestling history. If he showed up on my doorstep like that, I don't know what the relevance of not having a phone is. Would I let him in? I think I don't think I'd answer the door. But he might just break it down, so I kind of would have to. Like, if I see him there and I don't let him in, he's going to be even more angry at me. At least if I'm nice, maybe he won't rape me. And now, would I make him take off his leather mask? No, absolutely not. There's tons of stories around that his mask was the worst smelling thing in wrestling history. Like, they said just getting near his mask was awful. And he used to ask wrestlers to help him take it off, and they would refuse because they would gag at the smell of it. I am a disgusting, unsanitary, unwashed human being, more often partially sarcasm, and I wouldn't go near something like that. So no, I would not make him take his mask off. He can make himself comfortable. If Peyton Manning wins, will he be able to be considered the greatest quarterback of all time? Yeah, I think the argument becomes much. The argument against him isn't as easy for the Peyton haters. He'll have 2 rings. Brady has 3. Montana obviously has 5. Terry Bradshaw has 4. So obviously Montana is the most clutch quarterback ever. I don't think that can be argued. But Peyton is the greatest regular season quarterback. He will finish this year, if he wins the Super Bowl, at 12-12 in his postseason career. 500, not great. A lot of ones and dones. But his numbers in the postseason are not bad by any means. So me personally, yeah, I say he is. And the argument against him becomes a lot harder to make. Does your nose ever get tired from holding up your glasses? No. What the fuck kind of question is that? Do you wear sunglasses and does your nose get tired? Do your hips get tired from holding up pants? Pants are uncomfortable. Glasses can be uncomfortable at times, specifically if you go from being really cold outside to a warm room and they steam up, it sucks. But no, my nose doesn't get tired, and my nose is not too small, it's not too big. It's a little deformed from breaking it, but yeah, no, it's fine. All right, baseball question. Which baseball teams will improve and regress the most in 2014? As far as improve, in the National League, I'd go the Washington Nationals. They had a really down year this past year, missed the playoffs after being a hot pick coming into the season last year. A lot of things went wrong, a lot of injuries. I'd expect them to bounce back big time, especially since the Braves seem to take a step back, and you still got the Mets and the Phillies and the Marlins in the division. Speaking of the Marlins, don't sleep on them. I don't think they're going to be a playoff team, but they won like 68 games last year. I like their farm system. I like their pitching staff led by Jose Fernandez a lot. I could see them easily winning 75 games or so, which would be a big improvement. As many as 80. A lot has to go right for them, obviously. But National League, I would say Washington Nationals improved the most. As far as regressing the most in the National League, I'll go with the Cincinnati Reds losing Shin-Soo Choo, their leadoff man. I'm not a big fan of the way the team is built up. Brandon Phillips has been regressing a bit, and he's a big part of it. They need Joey Votto to hit for more power, and he hasn't been doing that. He's been walking more, which, you like a guy that walks, but if he's your cleanup hitter, you want him to hit home runs and doubles and clear the bases. So I'll go the Reds as far as regress in the National League. As far as American League goes, most improved, I keep waiting for the Angels to bounce back. After all the big money signings, you got Mike Trout, Pujols, Hamilton. And so I'll roll with them one more time. I think they win a wild card this year, the Nationals. Mariners should be much improved with Robbie Cano. They finally spent some money. They can still go out there and get a Bronson Arroyo, an Irvin Santana, a Fernando Rodney. So those two teams look to be my most improved in the American League. The Twins should actually be a little bit better too. Don't think they'll make the playoffs. As far as regressing in the National League, I want to say Boston, because you won the World Series, so you can really only take a step back, but I still like so much that's built on their team. So I'll say that I think Tampa is going to take a step back. Although I like a lot of pieces on there, I'll say Tampa. And I love Detroit. I think Detroit's going to be in it, but I worry about Verlander's health. He might miss the beginning of the season. I think the loss of Prince and relying on Ian Kinsler, who hasn't been healthy, is a bit of a risk. So the Tigers, while I think they make the playoffs, I think they play in a division that is it's good for them to be in. I think the Indians are taking a step back. I don't think a lot of those teams are ready. So watch the Tigers too. How many wrestling action figures do you own? Quote unquote action figures. I don't know anymore. They're all boxed up or hidden somewhere in my house. I had a lot. I'm not proud of it. I had some that were my brother's hand-me-downs, like Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair ones and Macho Man ones from when they were back with the WWF early on, before I was even born. If I went and looked at where they might be in my house, it's probably well over 50, and I'm not proud of that. Now, this is touching on the whole Marshawn Lynch thing. Should athletes be obligated to show up on media day, and should they be open to the media? I know a lot of people are like, oh, he shouldn't have to talk if he doesn't want to. Bullshit. This motherfucker's making over $10 million a year, and it's in his contract. He signed this contract. Every NFL player has an obligation in their contract to speak to the media after games. If you don't, you get fined. If he has an actual medical diagnosis of social anxiety, etc., that's fine. Ricky Williams didn't like talking to the media. He didn't like people being around him. He wore his helmet when he did interviews to avoid fines. I think Lynch is funny. I think he's a cool dude. I think he's a great running back. I think he's an idiot. You hear him talk, he's not too bright. But yeah, he should absolutely 110% be obligated to talk to the media. It is in your contract. You're getting paid multi-million dollar contract. You live up to that. I know he's doing 6 minutes, 7 minutes, and it's funny to laugh at that he's only doing it this long, but he should absolutely have to, and I hope the NFL fines him over $250,000, and then he could say, it's shitty, because these guys in the media have a job to do too. They just want to ask him stupid questions. There's a guy at Media Day asking, is this a must-win game? Well, no shit, it's a must-win game. It's win or go home. The whole playoffs is a must-win game. So yeah, if all his teammates should have to and players of the other team should have to, he should 100% be obligated to talk to the media, and he could just give yes and no answers like you see Bill Belichick do. So yeah. This is touching on the CM Punk issue. If you guys don't follow wrestling, if you do follow wrestling, CM Punk has apparently walked out in the WWE, not happy with the direction of his character's writing and having to face Triple H at WrestleMania, and building up as far as part-timers getting all these spots like The Rock, Batista, Brock Lesnar. He is not happy. He feels he deserves better. He's always wanted the main event WrestleMania. So before Raw on Monday, he said he's going home and he left. Now, some people are speculating that it is a work. I don't believe it is. His contract's up in July. He said he was done when this is over. He's said that he wants to do MMA. I think it's a bad idea because I think he'll be a great personality, but I think he'll get his ass kicked. Is he coming off like a crybaby a little bit? I think Punk has earned this right because whatever role they've put him in, whether it's a heel, whether it's a babyface, he has excelled. He has been phenomenal. Every match with him is phenomenal. Doesn't matter who you put him in there with. He had 3 legitimate match of the year candidates. The Undertaker match is one off the top of my head. The Cena match the night after the Rumble with Raw was phenomenal for a non-pay-per-view match. He deserves better than facing Triple H just because Triple H wants to put himself in another WrestleMania main event. I'm actually kind of happy he's not going to get what he wants now unless this is all indeed a work. So we'll see. I think that he deserves better. I think that he could have handled it better, but Punk is one of the reasons I like him is because he is brash, he is honest, he speaks his mind no matter what. He doesn't look to kiss ass, which you see with so often in the WWE. They just get on their knees for Vince and Triple H. Apparently his relationship with Vince is still good, but Triple H feels very disrespected. And it's disappointing because the fact that Triple H can put his character wherever he wants and do whatever he wants. So he knows that Punk will put on a great match with him. And, he got forced into that. So I hope it all works out. Punk is incredibly entertaining to watch. I'd rather see him go out on a good note and not be, if he ever decides he wants to wrestle again, be stuck in, God forbid, TNA or go back to Ring of Honor. Go somewhere where he can really excel. And I'd like to see him as a heel again if he comes back, too. But, yeah, it sucks. Talk about Ben Henderson's lack of finishing skills and Cowboy Cerrone's head kick. It speaks for itself. He has Benson Henderson, 8 wins in the UFC, all 8 by decision, several by controversial decision, both the Frankie Edgar fights, the Gil Melendez fight. He's been in, this Saturday was a very controversial fight as well. I thought he lost. I thought that it was pretty obvious Josh Thompson won. At first I scored it for Benson, but I went back and watched, and Joe Rogan couldn't get off his hands and knees for Ben Henderson, and judges were probably sitting by him. So, 8 wins in the UFC, all by decision. 9 fights in the UFC, all have gone, one was, he got finished by Anthony Pettis. This Saturday was a great example of it. He's a very good wrestler. He has a lot of power. He's huge for his weight class. But he doesn't rely on technique to use his wrestling. He uses his power. And it was facing a guy that is a superior wrestler. Ben Henderson does not use the clinch game the right way. He doesn't use leverage and his weight distribution properly. And he got thrown around by Josh Thompson. So it's disappointing because he is a good guy. He seems like he's a very good athlete and a very hard worker. But he's just, it's very passive game plan. And as far as Cowboy Cerrone goes, he broke the record for most fight night bonuses from the UFC. He's got 13 now. Guy is phenomenal to watch when it's not a big fight. He comes up short in every one of those fights. But anyone that is trying to get to that next level, he is the gatekeeper at 155 and a very dangerous gatekeeper. Someone asked, are you crying now that Justin Bieber is facing deportation? Bieber's kind of a twat. He's a very arrogant individual. I would never be into his music. I think it's kind of crazy that people are getting on him the way they are just because they don't like his music or that he is an asshole. Half of Hollywood is a bunch of pretentious assholes and all the show business industry. He gets singled out because he looks like a prepubescent boy and he sounds like a female. So it's probably not fair. I could go without ever hearing anything by him again, though. Next question is, should NCAA athletes be forced to adhere to the NCAA strict policies on student athletes as far as getting paid, even though NCAA is making millions off them? I don't think they should be forced to. I know I just saw Northwestern Illinois or the Northwestern Division Conference, whatever, is looking on starting up a union for the athletes. This is absolutely phenomenal. These kids, they can't get paid. They can't get jobs. The NCAA is making millions off them a year, billions in some cases. The NCAA in general is making billions. Schools are making hundreds of millions off their likeness. They can't sign anything without and get paid. They get in trouble. They can't take any kind of money from people for appearances. They get in trouble. And it's ridiculous. So this is awesome. I hope a union gets made. These players should get paid. Even if you just give them $5,000 a season to give them something. You know how many of these kids, they come from inner cities and their parents are crackheads and Demaryius Thomas, his mother and his damn grandmother are in prison for cocaine distribution for 20 years. My grandmother probably doesn't even know what cocaine looks like. And his grandmother was dealing coke. And that's the truth with so many of these athletes in college. They come from these inner cities where they don't have their parents giving them money. And they have to take money from people for autographs and appearances and from agents. And it goes on everywhere. Every player that's in the NCAA that is from some kind of and even the ones that have money have gotten paid. Agents take care of that for them. And they start getting agents when they're in college still. So players should not be forced to. They should not be punished if they do, like Terrell Pryor was, like they took Reggie Bush's Heisman away. It's absolutely ludicrous. So I hope this goes further. I hope the entire NCAA allows these kids to get paid somehow, pays them, because it is absolutely ludicrous. What is my favorite kind of knife? Well, I mean, butter knives are good for spreading out things on your sandwiches, whether it's mayonnaise, mustard, peanut butter, jelly. I have a pretty cool Batman knife. I mean, but I love butterfly knives, so I don't really know how else to answer that one. Someone wants me to talk about specifically how Dana White built up and is now ruining the UFC. Now, this, he said, at one time, his off-color, highly confrontational attitude helped get the UFC where it is, but now as the face of a multi-million-dollar organization that undergoes relentless scrutiny, shouldn't he start playing the role of an executive? He is perpetuating the opinions that MMA is nothing more than ill-tempered ruffians banging hands instead of a highly cultivated sport. Yeah, I agree. I liked Dana for a long time. I think he's a good dude. I think that he's a dickhead businessman. You have to be in those situations. He's very outspoken and over the top. I'm not a fan of it anymore. I don't like the way he treats his fighters and his competitors. But the thing, I can't say he should go be an executive though. He's not an executive. He is ultimately a fan. He is a fan of the sport, and you got a fan running your company. Like, if you give me the Miami Dolphins and you say, do what you want with them, and I build them up and I have all this money coming in and I'm selling out games and I'm getting big ratings, and I'm a Dolphins fan and I hate the New York Jets. I'm going to badmouth the Jets up and down and say awful things about them because I'm a fan. And that's what Dana White is. He's a fan. He loves the sport. He loves combat sports. He loves competition. He's not an executive. The guy was a goddamn boxer-size coach before he took this job. He just happened to know the Fertittas. I would love to see Lorenzo Fertitta step up and be more the voice and the figurehead. I think Dana can still do good things with them, because some people, there's no in between on Dana White. Either you love him or you hate him. And that's from fighters in the industry and fans as well. And unfortunately, I'm somewhere in between. Lately I've been falling more into hating him. I think that he is doing more harm than good right now. I think the fact that I think the sport's in a state of saturation, too many events too often. I love the sport. I'll watch any fight is on, but it's not like 2-3 years ago where if there was a fight, I would make sure I was home that night. I had nothing going on. I'd be around. I would change my work schedule. It's not like that anymore. If I miss a fight night, unless it's a big one or UFC, it's whatever. And he still starts marketing, this is the biggest fight ever. This is the biggest fight ever. The thing that makes the NFL so big is that it's a seasonal sport. Just like Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, NASCAR, golf, these are all seasonal things. So you have a period where there's nothing really going on. And when boxing has 2, 3, 4 big pay-per-views a year, they do extremely, extremely well generally. And it's because it builds up towards something. When you build every fight as the biggest fight you're having, it loses its appeal. And that's just the hardcore fans like me. That's the casual fans as well. And, you're putting on three events a month, 4 events a month. It's really hard to market it and keep people interested. The NFL, as I was saying, they're seasonal, and it's every Sunday. I know you have Monday and Thursday games, but the days in between there, it's just building up. It's building up, and that Sunday becomes an event in itself. Even if there's one game on Thursday and one game on Monday, that Sunday builds up for itself, and that's what makes the NFL's rating so astronomical. So the UFC needs to scale back. Dana needs to scale it back. I don't think it's so much Tim. I think it's oversaturation, and that's a different subject, as I said. But I think the UFC is just in a plateau moment. I mean, they built up so fast. You're talking from 2005 to the whole Brock Lesnar peak at UFC 100. They were just going up, 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 up. It was going to be hard to keep going up, and it's gone down a little bit. I think it's just kind of standing pat. I know they sold out the event for this Sunday as well, so that's a good sign. But yeah, Dana. There is a follow-up question as well. Should he be a background guy and find the new face of the UFC? I kind of answered that. I'd like to see Lorenzo do it. I think Dana doesn't handle himself correctly. and I don't like the way he talks to people on social media and the cursing all the time. Imagine if you saw Bud Selig or Roger Goodell talk to Roger Goodell about concussions. Oh, you know what it's like to get a fucking concussion? Like, you wouldn't see that. But like I said, he is not an executive. He's not a businessman. He doesn't know anything about that stuff. He's a promoter and a dumb one at that. And the last question is George St. Pierre on point or just being a baby regarding his allegations that younger fighters are doping? I definitely think he's on point. I think that the steroids are rampant, not just in MMA, but in every sport. And that's because you can't really test out the big steroid, HGH. There's no real testing grounds for it yet. It's a very expensive type of test to do Olympic testing. I honestly thought GSP was doping, and I wouldn't be surprised if he was. I know that he claims he never did. He is a phenomenal athlete, but I thought he was. I like that he wants to clean it up. I know he's talked about making a fighters union, which I think is overdue now. I like that he wants to see that kind of testing done in there. I know he got mad that the UFC wasn't behind him on that, but they have to work with the athletic commission. They can't. I understand their point of view too. But I want to see the fighting game get cleaned up. I mean, back to Dana White. He's gone back and forth on this. He loved TRT, then he hated it. He loved it, then he hated it. Now he hates it again. I love Vitor Belfort, but he's a guy that tested positive for steroids in his career, and now he gets TRT exemptions. Motherfucker needs TRT because he took steroids and his body can't produce testosterone anymore. My opinion is, if you need something like testosterone replacement therapy to still compete in an athletic competition, you should not be competing. And Frank Mir is going to be on it this weekend. I don't know if Alistair Overeem got an exemption for it. Just a couple weeks ago, someone else was on. I already forgot who was on it, but it's these exemptions. It's ridiculous. Dan Henderson, he was on it when he fought Vitor. He gets TRT. And he's older, so you understand, like, oh, his testosterone levels are lower. That means he shouldn't be fighting. That's giving him, you know how many athletes say, oh, if I had my body from 10 years ago with the knowledge I have now, it'd be great. Well, TRT gives them that ability to go back a few years and turn the clock back. So TRT's got to go. They got to start testing for HGH. It is very easy to beat these drug tests. Very easy. I could take steroids for a month, and if you ask to test me, I'll know how to pass the test. So that's the truth. Anyway, that's going to be it for this week. I appreciate you guys listening. Did go about an hour. Like I said, we had a lot of Super Bowl talk. Really appreciate it. Next week, I'll see what's going on. Hopefully we'll get a couple people sitting in with me. And we can talk about the Super Bowl, dissect it a little bit, and see what other sports news. It's going to be kind of a dull season. We might go to once every 2 weeks on this, though. Anyway, thank you for listening. Forward any questions, comments, anything to Facebook, Twitter, email me, text me. I don't give a fuck. Later.